Very cool.
We're now in upstate New York, and this is the Rhinebeck Aerodrome. And these are, it's a museum for World War I airplanes.
So we do air shows Saturdays and Sundays, mid-June through mid-October. More air shows than anywhere else in the country. So we have a really busy schedule. Our museum usually opens mid-May, about the 15th. So and we have 4 buildings up here. We'll go through this one and take you guys down the field and show you some of the other significant aircraft down there and cars. It's cars, memorabilia, aircraft, all kinds of things in the collection. So behind me is one of Cole's favorite planes. It's a Great Lakes 2T 1MS 1931. This plane was a trainer. It was actually, if you ever see the old ads from the Great Lakes Aircraft Company from 1931, you'll actually see the N number, this NC304Y. This was the factory demonstrator for the Great Lakes Aircraft Company in the 1930s. Cole found it in an abandoned car tractor trailer. It was all taken apart in pieces, and he was able to purchase it pretty cheap, put it all back together, restored it. It flew for many, many years. Cole would finish the Saturday shows with loops and rolls and aerobatics in this plane. Right now it's on temporary retirement up here at the museum, but we're probably going to get going again next couple of years. So we Cole believed the airplane wasn't an airplane unless it flew. So if it wasn't flying, it wasn't an airplane to him. He used to call the museum up here dead storage, because to him, if they weren't flying, they weren't really worth much. So, but we kind of continue that tradition of like the planes up here. They're not just on display. They'll eventually get restored and be flying again. Most of them. A few are permanently in the museum because they're just too valuable to have up in the air. But this is one that we'd like to get going again. It flew just about 5 years ago. It was flying still, so I actually got a chance to fly a little bit, which was cool. And then, any questions that they ask? It's a 1918 Sopwith Camel. This is a reproduction. That's original. This is a reproduction Sopwith Camel built by Cole Palin and a friend of his. Completed in the 1980s. Has a 160 horsepower gnome rotary engine. You guys know anything about rotary engines?
The kind that spin around themselves?
Yeah, come around the front here. I'll show you kind of how it works. This is one of the most famous aircraft in World War I. If you come in the front here, you'll see, this engine needs a little polishing, but you'll see that the whole engine goes with the prop. And that's how it was cooled back in World War I. It was a very efficient engine, very light because it didn't have to have a water jacket or radiator or water associated with it. So it was able to fly and it worked very well. This is what's called a monoplane engine. You can see down here there's the valve. There's just a single valve per cylinder. And that one valve takes care of intake and exhaust. So it's kind of a neat design. The air-fuel mixture would come right through the hollow crankshaft, get spun out to all the cylinders, and that's how the engine would work. But dual ignition, 2 spark plugs per cylinder, but only a single valve. So neat aircraft design.
How big are guns?
What's that?
How big are guns up there?
These are fake ones. Usually it'd have Spandaus, like 50 caliber.
And do they spew oil as bad as the Replica?
Yeah, this is it's a total loss oil system.
Yeah.
So any oil that goes into the cylinders is actually thrown out. And you'll see on any rotary plane, the left side of it will be just covered in oil. This one is. The gear and everything, because all the oil gets thrown out around the left side. So, yeah, they're pretty messy.
The way an airplane engine's supposed to work.
Yeah. Well, yeah. The way that these work, yeah. They're just messy. And then behind you is our Fokker Triplane Replica. This one has a 220 horse engine. A little bit more modern. When we say modern to us, it's like the 1940s. So when I say modern, I guess that's what I mean. It wouldn't have originally have an Oberrussel, a rotary engine, but this has a radial engine where the prop, if you let me scooch through a little bit, I need all different aircraft, all the engine designs. On this one, the prop moves, but the engine stays stationary. That's a radial engine, a little different. But the triplane was really early on in the war. They thought 3 wings would be better than 2. Only problem with it was visibility. The pilot sits in there. You can see, especially in 3-point position, where the tail's down and it's rolling on the runway. The pilot really can't see anything. These cutouts are actually to allow the pilot to see. So very little visibility in the triplane, which makes it still a handful nowadays. When we're working on the runway, a lot of these planes, like this one, that one, the Lakes has brakes. But most of them don't have any brakes, just a tail skid, So turning them's, you know, a chore. You just have the rudder to help turn the plane. So a lot of times we'll be on the runway, grabbing a wingtip, and spin the plane around. So it takes a bit of effort.
Now, what about this artwork in the front?
Yep, this plane is kind of a conglomeration of a couple different aircraft. There was a pilot in World War I called Werner Voss, and he had this scowling face on his plane. Another pilot, Manfred von Richthofen, the Red Baron of Germany, had the red, and Cole took different bits and pieces of different triplanes
Yeah.
and made his own.
Huh.
Neat story that on this side there's a cloud and heart.
Yeah.
On the other side there's a pig's butt, and Cole's wife Rita hated the pig's butt, so whenever she was going to come down to the airfield, everyone knew to turn the plane around so they could see the pig's butt. Yeah. Funny story. Yeah. All right, we'll go on over here. Up where meet Fokker's over here. One of the nicest aircraft. Favorites here in the collection. This is a Fokker D.VIII, which was probably the best World War fighter of all time. It was the only aircraft mission in the treaty ever signed that they all had to be given up to the Allies. It has a 200 horsepower Mercedes engine, original
Fokker
engine,
D.VII.
reproduction aircraft, but it's one of the best flying aircraft. It was a nice combination of maneuverability but stability, where the plane could, you know, be stable enough to fire on the enemy, but be maneuverable enough to get behind them. This one's been flying here since 1993. It's the last plane that Cole Palin got to see fly. Ken Caston's our head mechanic right now, was the one that finished it up and test flew it.
This is authentic or replica?
It's a replica airframe, but original engine.
Okay.
Yep. Has a Mercedes engine, 6-cylinder water-cooled inline engine, really, really great engine out of World War I. This paint scheme is actually an original paint scheme from World War I too, called the 7 Swabbings. So it's a neat plane. Ken Caston's our lead mechanic. He goes up and he goes loops with it and hammerheads and does a really nice routine with it. So. And then over here is another one of the greatest airplanes from World War I. Different plane. It's just a single wing monoplane design. It's called the Fokker E.V, or also called the
D.VIII.
what's that?
D.VIII.
D.VIII, yes, D.VIII, yep. They kept with the D design, the D name, even though it wasn't a double wing aircraft. It was really an Eindecker. Ein meaning one wing, but it was also called the E.V, had both names. But they called it the Flying Razor Blade because coming at you, it just had that one wing. It was very hard to see, but it had excellent visibility. You could see very well out of it, very good climb rate. You wouldn't think so with just that one wing, but it's very, very thick in the middle. Really neat plane. Also a rotary engine, 160 horsepower gnome rotary engine. This one flies around the pattern. It's actually owned by a friend of the Aerodromes. So really, really neat plane. It was flying all last year. So
And now, how about the colorings on the wheels and the...
that's an original World War I paint scheme. I don't know why it was chosen like that. Just someone in World War I chose it like that, and then the owner, Brian Coughlin, chose to paint his like that. This was owned by Kermit Weeks down in Florida for a while, and then when Brian bought it back again. So you might have seen it in his collection for a little while. But Brian Coughlin, he was the original builder, bought it back last year, I think. He bought it back from because Kermit's getting one that's even more authentic. So.
When you do your air shows, are you doing mock dogfights?
Yep, on Sundays.
Oh,
yeah.
really?
Yeah, Sunday's our big World War I show. Saturday we do mostly history of flight. We do the Pioneer aircraft, the Blerios, the Hanrios, and all that. And we do a little bit, we call it the World War I stuff. But
So you
Sunday,
really have to come for the whole weekend.
yeah, both days.
Is there a particular weekend that if we could only come back for one weekend this summer, which would it be? Is there one that stands above all the others?
Yeah, we have a couple of special ones. If you look on the website, oldrhinebeck.org, it shows kind of our special weekends, but two of the big ones are model meet weekend, where people come and they fly model airplanes, and we do the show as well. It's usually a big crowd, so we usually like pull out all the stops and fly everything we can and really go all out. And then World War I weekend is pretty cool too. Those are probably the two biggest.
Brad, how's the gift shop doing down on the field?
Good. We're just down there today. They're just getting ready to put the septic in and everything. For those that don't know, our gift shop burned last year. On August 20th. We had a fire. and our gift shop burned completely to the ground, which is a really big loss, not only for the gift shop, but for the model museum that was part of it. So all Colhead and the founder's models, he had rubber band models he built. There's a few left here, but most of them were down there and now got burned up, unfortunately. As well as some original Warren fabric and things. But it's coming along well. We just put the trusses up a couple weeks ago. The roof's on it. We're getting ready to do the septic in about a week or two. So it should be done for our big, we're having a big event on May 21st for the Spirit of St. Louis for our big unveiling. So we'll see that on the field too. Good to hear it. Yep. Okay, we'll kind of continue around this way. Like I said, this place is kind of packed, so we're going to do our best to make our way through. Watch yourself.
It's fancy. Well, usually it is off. I don't know what I did last night, but it's now off.
You enabled it.
Yeah. My son's not here. What would I do?
Yeah, it is.
When did you say this tri-motor went into the show?
When does it?
What year did it go in?
What, I don't know, I think Cole bought it in the mid-80s to replace a plane that was damaged here.
I remember the
There's been
original.
a number of different triplanes in the show. Cole had an original triplane that he flew from the 60s until the 70s with a rotary. And then he got one with a 125 Warner that he flew for about 5 or 8 years, and it got damaged, and he bought this one.
I remember
What
the
happened to the
original.
original triplane? It's in the hangar across the way. It's still up here. Yeah. So behind me is another plane. This is from the late 1920s, early 1930s, called the American Eagle. This was donated by a man whose name was Paul Richards, and it was a popular barnstorming aircraft in the 20s and 30s. Originally, it would have an OX5 engine, which were the most common engines back then because they were cheap and easy to get, but they were heavy. And when it had an OX5, it had a much shorter nose. The nose would be like here with the prop. And when they put this lighter 5-cylinder Kinner air-cooled engine on with no water or anything in it, it was much lighter. So they actually had to extend the nose, extend the motor mount. They called it the Anteater because of that. So it's a good plane though. Paul Richards used to own this and fly it off of his airfield at his own house down in Poughkeepsie in Red Oaks Mill, and he called it Richards International. It was actually a 600-foot long strip, and he'd fly it in and out of there. But he was kind of a bit of a daredevil. He was a motorcycle racer and race cars, and he's an interesting guy. He donated this and 2 motorcycles to the museum when this museum building was built. And you see, we have all kinds of model aircraft. This is a model of Wrong-Way Corrigan's plane. He actually flew across the Atlantic. He had trouble getting permission, so he took off from New York City, and he said that his compass was backwards and that he went the wrong way. He ended up in Ireland. So he claimed. What's that? So he claimed. Yeah.
Then you got that compass swing right.
Yeah. And then a motorcycle here, a Merkel Lake from 1909, very rare. We have a lot of motorcycles and cars and things in the collection here. And then behind me is a 1911 Bleriot. There's a few museums with a Bleriot. We actually have 2. We actually used to have 3, but we traded one, sold one. But this is a 1911 Bleriot, quite original. It used to fly in the shows. People were talking about Dave Fox before. Dave Fox used to fly this plane in the shows, and because of his amazing airmanship and his lightweight, he was able to fly this really, really well. Would fly it in we call a steeplechase, where they fly over a ribbon and back under. And it's a really great flying plane, but it broke a connecting rod some years later, and we haven't flown it since. But we have an earlier Bleriot that we fly on the field. It's actually the oldest flying aircraft in the United States. It's a 1909 Bleriot, same age as Louis Bleriot, same time as Louis Bleriot would have flown across the Atlantic. The English Channel, words are escaping me today. It's been a little while since I gave a tour. So this is neat. This is actually a wing warper. If you stay there, I'll move the wings for you and kind of see how it works.
The great innovation of the right.
You've got a Harriet Quimby flight suit.
Innovation of the right.
Watch.
Already being done.
See the wings moving?
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's how it works. One of the interesting things about early aviation was that no one really knew how an airplane was supposed to be built. So everyone did things their own way. The Wrights had their own system, the Curtis's had their own system, in Europe they had their own systems as well. So Louis Bleriot was actually the first one to really have a standardized, the same system we use nowadays, with a control stick, which he called the cloche, which would be a stick in the middle that you move right and left for aileron or wing warping, forward and back for up and down, and then rudder pedals for right and left. So it became more the standardized system, whereas Curtis had a different design, and the Wrights had different design as well.
But Curtis did put ailerons on an airplane.
Yes, he did. Yeah, yeah.
You do that because he was getting sued by the Wrights?
Yeah, well, it was actually because of the patents.
Yeah.
He couldn't do wing warping in the United States, so he developed further the aileron. Yeah.
And which one did you say, Wrong Lake, Oregon?
This a plane just like this small
Oh,
one
blue
here.
one.
Yeah, it's a model of the plane that Ron.
Yeah, right. He was a really short guy.
Tiny man.
Yeah, it's a Curtis Robin, which actually we have one on the field as well. The Curtis Robin, not that color, it's orange and yellow, but a really neat plane. It kind of looks like the Spirit of St. Louis in a way. We actually used it when we were practicing to fly the Spirit of St. Louis. We had a pilot sit in the front, and then Ken, who's going to fly our Spirit of St. Louis on its test flights, and he sit in the back, and we put up cardboard all the way around him so he could always see out the side windows to practice and get the hang of it, which went well. All right, come on around this way. It's an interesting painting. It's a painting of an air meet. You see a lot of the paintings here. We've got Ballard. Did a lot of paintings that are up on the walls. It's an interesting picture of an airplane. Oh, yeah. And over here. For the crash. You'll kind of see that all of our hangars have stuff kind of everywhere. We're out of space, basically. There's so much stuff. We don't know where to put it all. But underneath this aircraft is a 1931 Morgan, an interesting car of its own right, but a three-wheel car. Yeah, I heard that. Yeah. I think they're four-wheel now, aren't they? Are there three-wheel ones too?
Wow.
That's a model of Amelia Earhart's Lockheed Vega.
Yeah, but
Lockheed
the
Electra.
guy standing next to her looks evil.
Yeah, I think that's the
He just looks apprehensive.
Evil
about
Fred
getting an airplane
Noonan.
with her.
So here in front of you is a really interesting aircraft. This is called the Voisin from 1908, 1909, right around there. This one was actually built in the United States under license. It's very, very rare aircraft. I believe that this is the only one in existence. It's what they call the box type design, which was early type of aircraft design where you'd have squares, and those squares would make up the wing. Some had many, many squares. But this one's, a little bit more simple. It's a pusher like many early aircraft were, with the engine in the back and a pilot sitting ahead of that, and the tail is way back there. It's kind of a big plane.
This thing ever get in the air?
This one, I don't know if Cole ever flew this one or if he just taxied it. In Europe, though, this was the first aircraft to make a circular flight, to make a flight in the air in a complete circle. So it did fly to a certain degree. It wasn't, quite as airworthy as like Bleriot or something, but they did get in the air. The problem with the pusher design was that the old joke was the first person at the accident was the pilot, and the second thing to arrive at the accident was the engine. So it was really, really dangerous. You had that big 400-pound engine sitting behind you. In this one you got a radiator full of boiling hot water sitting behind you. A lot of them you'd have the fuel tank sitting above your head. So the pusher design was very dangerous, and once they switched to tractor designs, which would be where the engine was ahead of you, the fatality rate went down 300%. So much, much safer. But a really neat aircraft, and one of the very significant aircraft in our collection. And then down here, how much we can wiggle through here. Let me show you this on the wall. I was saying before about the original 6 aircraft that Cole had. In 1951, he bought 6 aircraft, and this was one of them from the Roosevelt Field Collection. This was Aeromarine 39B. You can see some pictures of it here when it was all together. Cole had it all together, had it about ready to fly, and he was approached by somebody that was doing a commercial for a cigarette ad. In the olden days, Cole really didn't turn down any offer for money. If he could make a couple bucks with his airplanes, he would. And so they did some filming here at the aerodrome, and things took a little bit longer than they thought, so they had to truck the plane a little bit south so that there'd still be leaves on the trees and it would look green and the background would still match. And during that trip, as he was driving it south on a open trailer, somebody threw a cigarette butt out, and the plane caught on fire, and it was very badly burned and damaged. And then he had it in storage at his house, and he was doing a little work on it, doing a little restoration work on it, and his house burned down. So the plane has kind of had a rough history, but it's the only Aeromarine 39B in existence, and kind of a neat piece of our collection. And somebody mentioned Tom Polipink, I think, before. He's one of the people here at the aerodrome. He's a big part of what we do, and he loves this plane and really, really wants one day to restore it and use a couple of pieces out of it to rebuild a flying aircraft out of that. But it's a long, long ways to go. So there are a few pieces that are in decent shape, like the motor mount here. And you can see Cole was working at one time on the tail section to rebuild that. So there are a couple pieces to it, but not really too much. But it's a neat story. Kind of shows the hardships that Cole went through back in the day, the early days of the aerodrome. This is another plane that Cole built. He got started. It was actually traded to someone else, and then we bought it back recently. It's called Ansaldo. It was a World War I aircraft. It has a really neat fuselage design. You can see from this angle where it's very tight at the bottom and kind of streamlined. But
Yeah, it's like a crew boat outside.
yeah. A couple planes look like that. Yeah. And the wings are actually over there. The wings are in good shape. The fuselage has gotten a little bit roughed up over time, but
What's it called again?
an Ansaldo. Yeah, it's Italian. It was an Italian fighter from World War I.
Always
Right.
styling.
We can probably make our way down here a little bit. Just watch your step. There's a couple of things in here. And down here is another World War I fighter. This is called the Marine AI. It's the original World War I fighter. I think we have 4 or 5 original World War I's in the collection here. Our Jenny being one, this being another. Newport 10, which is another hangar. So a couple. This one also has a 160 horsepower gnome rotary engine. Cole flew this for many, many years. You can see, I was saying about the castor oil, you can see all the castor oil all over it. They get pretty well covered. I was down at the Smithsonian recently with my family, and I asked the man giving a tour there about how they choose to keep things original or to restore them. He said that now they're choosing to keep things as original as possible, and just preserve them. So that's kind of funny because that's sort of what we do here. We haven't changed things too much, which is neat because you can see, the originality of it and what it did when it was flying and everything. So, but a neat plane. It flew out of here for many, many years.
Why do they call it a gnome rotary?
I don't know. I think originally the story is that they chose the name gnome because it was a hard little worker.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and that was why. Yeah, they built.
The company was Lerone, wasn't it?
There was Lerone. It was also Gnome. It was a different company. Yeah. Lerones were a little different. Gnomes had the single valve. Lerones had 2 valves per cylinder, like a 80 Lerone, which normally is in here, but that plane's not in here at the moment. Has 2 valves per cylinder, intake and an exhaust. It's a little different. It has intake tubes instead of having the gas and air come straight through the cylinder. It actually comes through an intake tube to a valve, which then opens up and lets the air into the cylinder. So Lerones are a little bit more complicated than Gnome. They both run quite nicely. This is an example of a Lerone here. This one's open in the front. You can see how it works. And it has 2 valves per cylinder, intake and exhaust, which are stuck on some of them. But these plugs are actually called desiccator plugs. They keep the moisture out of the cylinders. You can see the intake tubes here. That's the tube that would bring the air-fuel mixture into the cylinder. There's push rods. That's a 110 Lerone. This is an 80 Lerone. This is a Kinner, like we saw on the American Eagle over there. It applies on the fleet as well.
Sir, did you ever put a Lerone in a Clerget?
I'm not sure. I think it,
Remanufactured will run.
yeah, a couple of, like, I can't remember which one it is, but it's either Overus or Larone Clerget. There's a copy, or it was the original. They're the same as the other one, but it's just
They're all
different.
real similar.
Yeah, they're similar, yeah.
So, Mike, what brought you to the museum?
My father was in Air Force in Vietnam. Flew on C-130s and KC-135s. So I was into aviation from when I was like 4 or 5 years old. Or the first word I could spell was fuselage. So,
Just not an easy word to spell.
no. So I was just an aviation kid my whole life. We used to go to air shows when I was younger, and I used to ride my bike to the local airport whenever I could, help work on planes, push airplanes as much as I could until somebody told me they could give me a ride, that sort of thing. And then I used to come here for model master meetings, which was the local flying airplane club here, the model club. And later on, after I got done with college, I lived nearby, and I came here, and I came for an air show, and Tom Polipink actually was here as the director at the time, and I filled out a form to become a volunteer, started volunteering and cutting the grass and doing everything and working the air shows. And then somebody asked me if I wanted to be on the board. That was like 10 years ago, and I had a spot on the board, and then spot opened up for secretary. Nobody wanted to do it, so I became secretary, and then vice president, and then president. I've been president for at least 5 years, 5, 6, 7 years now. So, yeah, so it's kind of an interesting route.
And you fly too?
Yeah, I have my pilot's license. I don't fly here at the aerodrome. I have my pilot's license. I haven't been flying too much because I got 2 little kids right now, 2 and 4, so they keep us kind of busy at home, and I haven't had as much time to go flying as I'd like to, but occasionally I get to go here in a Cub or something, and we're working on getting a Club plane here too, so that would be nice. Yeah, but I don't fly in the air shows. You have to be really dedicated, really good pilot. Most of our air show pilots have 1,000 to 2, 3, 4, 5,000 hours. Back 5-10 years ago, when a lot of the old timers were here, and there was a lot of people that had a lot of hours, they did a survey here, and I think the average hours of the pilots here was like 15,000 hours. So yeah, it's a lot.
All the time.
So most of the pilots, even still now, most of the pilots have 3,000-4,000 hours of flight time. So.
By the way, via Facebook, Tom Polipink says hi.
Oh, okay. That's good. Yeah, I was just talking to him the other day. So, yeah, Tom's a big part of, he created this display. He does a lot up here in the museum, and he just does a lot of behind the scenes stuff. He's a great guy.
Editing World War I Aero now.
Yeah. He's always doing that. He also writes our newsletter, so.
Now, is your field only for the air show, or is it an active airfield as well?
It's an active airfield. It's private. If you wanted to fly in something of your own, just call and get permission. We kind of screen people a little bit, because we'll get people that want to come in like a Twin Beach or something. We're like, no, go to Kingston or 172. It's a little bit rough on tricycle gear aircraft if you haven't been here a lot and know where the rocks are, that sort of thing. But we do a lot of flyings. Cubs.
How long's the field?
It's 2,500 on the books, but there's trees on both ends, so it's really like 2,000 usable. Yeah, and there's a dog leg and trees, and it depends what you have. It just depends on your experience. So, yeah, Bill King, who's one of our pilots, he just passed away this winter, but he had a Cessna 150 that he would bring in here and set it down, use up like 400 feet of the runway. And I've seen other people with short takeoff and landing aircraft use up the entire 2,500 feet. So it really depends on your skill level.
I landed here with Dave Fox, who was one of the first performers. He was my instructor over at Poughkeepsie, and we used to fly in there.
Yeah.
What were you
There was a couple.
What were you flying?
The J3.
Yeah, there's a couple of C-47s that landed here back.
Really?
In the day. Yeah. Yeah.
The
So
weight out
that was
of
when
that.
people were a lot more experienced and weren't so risk averse. And you can do that with those sort of planes. So it's a Wildcat that landed here. Yeah, there's a lot of neat stuff that came in back in the day. We still get some neat flying. So yeah.
What's the story on this car?
This is a 1927 Chandler. It was actually donated to the aerodrome last year. One of our volunteers pointed someone in our direction that had the car and thought it would be a great addition, and it has been. It's been a wonderful car. It's up here for storage in the winter, but it makes a very nice complement to our Spirit of St. Louis, which is also 1927. So a lot of time when we have that out, we have this out as well. But it runs, it drives. It was recently restored, so it's a beautiful
Yeah, it's lovely.
car. Yeah. So, yep. All right, let's go on back around that way.
Yeah, who needs high beams when you got headlights like that?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, they have the car for the same reason we have tanks.
No, that's true.
And then on your left,
Racing plane 1920s.
Camel, most of you have heard of the Triplane company. This is a PA, it's got parts in a couple different aircraft, like a PA 5, 6, 7. But this one, it was a conglomeration of a couple when the company closed. But it was used here for hop and rides, which we still do to this day. This one would hold 2 people in the front cockpit, pilot in the back, 220 horsepower engine, Continental. But we use it for quite a few years doing rides. Now we use a new standard D.25 from 1929. There's 2 of them we do rides. Neat plane. On your left is a Morane-Saulnier MS-130. Great fighter from 1920s, 1927. Nicholas Beasley over there, folding wing. And the back over there is a Bird, which was also one of our rides planes for a while. That has a kinner. And then on this side, there's a Waco Model 10, which was an early sport aviation aircraft, an OX-5, kind of a cheap way to get in the air. Spartan down there, C3. And up above are a couple of planes you might use in the 1920s and 30s when money was scarce. If you're really short on money, you could build the first one here, which was a Dixon primary glider. It would be towed up in the air by a big bungee cord or with a car. They used to fly it actually here at the aerodrome, tow it with a Volkswagen Beetle. Yeah, it's really neat. A couple of guys built that. Our latest issue, our latest newsletter is an article about the 2 gentlemen that built it. And in the back there's a Heath Parasol, which was, you could build that airplane out of plans from like Flying Glider magazine, just like a Pete and Paul air camper. And you can see way in the right on the back, there's a Ronca C3 called the Flying Bathtub. Like I said, there's parts and pieces all around here. On the wall over there, there's wings to a new standard U-25. Whole bought, I think, 6 of them in the 1970s that were dusters. And took all the best parts and pieces and made up 2 that we use for rides now, and other parts and pieces are still scattered about around there.
Do you still have a bathtub that you fly in the show?
Not currently. There was a guy that had his own here for a couple of years. We don't have one currently, not this year. And then this is a 1918 Columbia ambulance. Very, very original. Just had an overhaul on the engine. Yeah, you can go ahead.
Oh, wrong way.
That's the right way. That's the noise it's supposed to make. Yeah, it's kind of weird. That's like off of a Model T. It's almost like a Model T noise, yeah. I used to use those in submarines too for the dive sound. So if you ever heard of submarines with dive sound, it's like the same sound. Yeah. So very cool. Yep. All right.
Got any spare OX-5 parts?
Yeah, we got quite a bit. Oh, fine. Oh, really? Oh, really? Yeah. You guys want to walk down the road? This aircraft in the very back here is kind of neat. It's a Chamberlain, this one. And it was stored outside at Teterboro Airport for a while and eventually made its way here. Does anybody know who Clarence Chamberlain is? Anybody back there know who Clarence Chamberlain is? So that's why it's important to be first.
Well, he was the guy that was waiting with Lindbergh.
He was the second one to cross the Atlantic. Nobody knows who he is because he was second. Everybody knows who Lindbergh is, but he designed and built this plane, which I don't know if it ever flew. It was complete at one time, but this was all that was left of it. But it's kind of neat. It's a semi-monocoque design with the outside skin carrying most of the load. It's a kind of advanced design, just built just like a Cessna is now. So, kind of cool. And there's that Rocca C3 I was talking about. Cole would joke that the plane was painted yellow on one side, black and orange on the other. He would joke that he did that so that if the police saw him doing something he wasn't supposed to, they never knew what color the plane was. I think the real reason was that he only had a little bit of yellow, a little bit of orange, a little bit of black. So he kind of made do with what he had. Yeah. It's a neat engine too. You can see the engine actually makes up the front of the airplane, and it's kind of fared into the aircraft. And the bottom section, the oil cooler is part of the aircraft as well. So it's a specially designed engine just for that plane. It's, I believe just 36 horsepower would fly that plane. Yeah.
It looks like a little
about
creature.
40.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
looks
It's
a
following
lot.
about 40 miles an hour.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Neat little plane. Dave Fox used to do instruction that back in the day too.
Not with me.
No. Yep.
He loved it.
Yeah, good little plane. Yeah. All right, well, why don't we get back in the bus and we're going to go down on the field and look at the Spirit of St. Louis that we just completed. You guys are ready to take care of that. What's that?
Just gonna get the sign so I know what I'm taking a picture of.
It's been a long time project here at the Aerodrome. It's been about 20 years we've been working on it, although there was about a 9-year break. Ken started this aircraft. This is Ken Cassins over here on my right.
Hi. Welcome to the old Rhinebeck Aerodrome.
Ken and a group of volunteers started about 20 years ago. Actually, Cole started it about 20 years ago. Cole Pillen, our founder, started for Replica and had built wings and a fuselage. And then Ken, after Cole had passed, Ken and a group of volunteers started working on it again, but quickly realized that the wings had been chewed up by mice in the barn and the fuselage just wasn't quite right.
No
And-
respect.
Yeah, exactly. So basically this whole plane, except for one spar, has been built from scratch, not from that original piece. But Ken and volunteers built the whole fuselage from scratch, the wings from scratch, everything's just all built from the parts and pieces and steel tubing and wood and fabric. It's built just like the original, just like the one in the Smithsonian. Couple little tiny differences, like the fabric isn't grade A cotton like Lindbergh would have been. And a couple little tiny other differences, like it doesn't have as many fuel tanks. We're not trying to fly across the Atlantic with it, so. But other than that, it's got a Wright J5 engine, just like the original would. Cole got that engine in the purchase of some B-25s that we want for rides, and that's what started the whole project. Yeah, you got any questions? Yeah.
You know, this reminds me of that opening scene in 2001 where all the apes are going up to the black obelisk. We're all like crawling all over it.
But yeah, it's flown 9 times so far. We're going to fly it again for our big event on May 23rd. You can open the door if you want to see a little better.
Oh, thank you.
The Smithsonian was very generous. They actually gave us some instruments and things and helped us out with quite a bit of it. Allowed Ken to go up in a cherry picker and take some pictures of the original.
That means they like you.
Yeah, yeah, they've been very generous with us.
Very cute about that.
Yeah.
Was that really a roof open like that?
What's that?
The roof really open like that?
Yeah, originally it would have been it is on the original one. It was so that Lindbergh could see the stars and things to navigate at night.
Those things up on the roof up there, up on the top of those?
Those fuel vents, the original 3 tanks would have had to vent the fuel tanks, when they got hot.
And the fabric pretty close to the same fabric pretty close?
This is modern fabric, like
Yes.
Dacron, like aircraft fabric. Originally would have been grade A cotton,
Yes.
but grade A cotton doesn't last, and we'd have to recover it after 5 or 6 years, whereas this will last 15 or 20.
What's the fuselage, the wood, what kind of fuselage?
It's steel tube fuselage. Everything else is exactly original, steel tube fuselage, and then these are wooden stringers that run the length to give it a shape.
The wheels and the wheels the same too?
Yep, same type of wheels. Original prop. Actually, Niagara Aerospace Museum had an original prop that we were able to trade. We had one, but it wasn't airworthy. They had one that we were able to make airworthy, so we traded theirs. Was just a wall hanger, so they didn't really care. So, yeah.
What's the horsepower of the engine?
What's
What's
that?
the horsepower of the engine?
This is 235.
235.
Yeah, exactly the same as Lindbergh. Yeah.
How many gallons of gas did he go over there with, and how many did the original tank have?
How many gallons of gas did Lindbergh have when he left? 450. 450.
Yeah, he had 5 tanks, 3 wing tanks and 2 fuselage tanks.
2 fuselage. Okay. And how many miles did he go? Was he getting how many miles a gallon?
How many miles?
It averaged about 11 gallons.
11 gallons an hour?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, usually aircraft stuff is in per hour.
per hour, yeah. Is that pretty reasonable gas use?
Yeah,
That-
yeah. He was a little more, early on, and then later on he was able to, throttle back a little bit and lean it out a little more. So
How much do you have left out of 450
he had
gallons?
about 70 gallons left.
Yes.
And he started out with 25 gallons of oil. And I think he had something like 17 gallons of oil left.
That's actually really pretty good.
Yeah.
27, what was it, 20, how many hours?
It was 33 and a half hours.
3 hours, and so,
He was actually flight planning for about 40 hours, but he had a tailwind, so.
What was the whole weight of the plane with all that gas and oil? Did they have?
It was over 5,000 pounds. The empty weight of the airplane is 2150. And ours is almost the same. Ours is, I think, 2160 or 70.
And the wiring he used for the ailerons, the wiring he uses, that's the same wiring or the cables?
Yes.
Cables,
Yeah.
Same cables?
Yeah, and they're all woven to the AN 5-tuck splice, just like the original. And if you look in the cockpit at the rudder pedals, you can see the cables splicing in there. You can see it close up.
what have you done that's different?
Well, wherever possible, we're using modern materials. The
So you're
fabric.
not using cotton wrap wiring?
No.
Yeah.
No, actually, the only electrical wiring in there is the earth inductor compass. And that is period type wiring on that. The earth inductor compass does work. We have the generator, which is driven by the little wind wheel back there. And the gauge we made up, and that works. And the controller for it, we sort of jury-rigged that, made a replica, but it's not a true, we're still looking for a controller for it. And basically all that is the compass rose and the azimuth with a hand crank, and you crank in the heading you want to maintain with the controller. The controller's right down on the left, or the right part of the seat, lower side of the seat down there. You'll see it if you look in the cockpit.
When you look at the dashboard or the cockpit there, how much different is a modern, like a Cessna 172 than his board there? It's not much different, is it? He's got
They have
similar
the
things.
basic same instruments.
Yes.
This one has a turning bank in it, and compass, airspeed, altimeter, tachometer, oil.
Pretty similar, though.
Yeah.
Where'd you hide the 5 gas tanks? Tell me where the 5 tanks were.
Well, there were 3 wing tanks, and we have them represented with the caps and the vents up top.
Okay.
They would have been about 150 gallons.
Total 50 each. And you're hiding in the middle of the wing here?
Well, right ahead of the the cockpit
Yes.
is the main tank, that
Yes.
whole big area there.
Where it says Spirit of St. Louis, right
Well,
behind
no,
Spirit
that-
of St.
yeah,
Right
behind
behind Spirit of St. Louis,
yeah.
a big tank. That would probably
That would have been 209
209 gallons. And
And then where the Spirit of St. Louis is,
a lower, at lower level or.
well,
right,
full area there.
Yes.
That would have been 89 gallons.
Okay.
And about where the UIS is in Lewis would have been the oil tank, which acted almost as a firewall.
27 gallons, okay. And then where's the other gallons? You had them up in the wing, the rest of it? You had another, there's another 200 gallons somewhere. Another 150 gallons.
No.
Okay, you said 450 gallons of gas.
450. Yep.
So 270 down there and then
And
one.
209,
Yes.
89, and 150
Oh, 150 up in the
wing.
Yes, I got you. Okay. Yeah.
A couple of people have asked how the earth inductor compass works.
Uh-huh.
If I get them around here, so you only have to answer it once, can you tell them?
Yeah.
Okay. Hey guys, Ken's gonna tell you how the earth inductor compass works since it's beyond me.
All right. Well, I'll come over here and I can point out some things. There's three components to the earth inductor compass. The generator, which is wind driven, and it's a generator, but it doesn't have any magnets in it. Well, you can't produce electricity without magnetism. In other words, you have the spinning coils in the generator. Without a permanent magnet around it, you won't induce a voltage. So what it does is it uses the Earth's magnetic field as its permanent magnet. So that's the generator. That's the first component. The second component is the controller, which you dial in on right here on the side of the cockpit, the heading you want to maintain. And then the third component is the indicator. And what the indicator is just a millivolt meter, and it's centered 0. Okay? So basically how it works is it's not a compass at all, it's just a voltmeter. So once you get the heading that you want, say you're going north, there's a brush block on the bottom of that generator that he rotates with the controller. So he rotates it and he goes to the north. Now it's all been calibrated so that it won't read any voltage, because the brushes that are trying to pick up the voltage off the coils of the generator, which is spinning, don't line up with the magnetic field of the Earth. So when these coils are cutting through the magnetic field, it's trying to produce a voltage, but the brush block is not positioned to do that. So now he's flying north, and as the airplane's going, if it starts to turn off course, now the airplane is going off on a different angle, but now it's picking up the voltage that these coils are making from the Earth's magnetic field, and it's transmitting them through the carbon brushes on the brush block, and then it'll indicate on the meter that he's off. That he's off course. So all he does is he turns, brings the needle back to center, and he's back on course. It's very basic and it's very simple, but it worked very well. When he made landfall off the coast of Ireland, he was only 3 miles off course.
And so that's designed to keep magnetic deviation from coming into play? Is that what it is?
Yeah, it's all compensated. It's just like your compass, you have a correction card and everything else. But every 100 miles, he'd make a course change. So he would, he flew the Great Circle route and just made a course change every 100 miles and kept that needle in the middle. Now the advantage of that, he also had a wet compass overhead here, and they put it in this position up here because that's where the least magnetic interference of the airplane was, with all the steel tubing and everything else around. So they had a reverse reading card on this compass because where his position to look at the compass was kind of strenuous, so they put a mirror in here with a reverse reading card so he could read it in the mirror, which is right overhead. And the advantage to the earth inductor compass is if you're in turbulent weather, the magnetic compass would be swinging all around, where the earth inductor compass would be stable.
So it's more like gives you the same advantage as the DG does today.
Same idea, if you want to think of it in that line, yeah.
But the inductor compass can't tell the difference between any two directions 180 degrees from each other. So if you're going straight north or straight south.
Well, this is where the controller comes into play. The controller knows which is north and south, because they have it calibrated on the ground. Now, our controller is just a mock-up, but it does, if you see the, as I'm turning the controller, the friction of the brush block on that commutator is actually turning the whole generator thing. So they had it calibrated on the ground so that, you know, the compass rose was in sync with the magnetic heading. All these gauges in here are the exact same type. As a matter of fact, the Smithsonian de-assessed 3 gauges and gave them to us. And they also gave us a lot of 8x10 glossy black and white photographs that they had of the airplane when it was being constructed out in San Diego. So a lot of our information for the positioning of all these gauges and everything in the cockpit came from those photographs. And they're very, very clear. The old black and whites, I mean, you could take a magnifying glass and you could see the position of the screw heads. They were so sharp. So we tried to position the same screws in the same position and stuff.
Yeah, Ken and team of volunteers built this plane to be exactly like it was when it left for Paris. So you'll see it doesn't look exactly like the Spirit of St. Louis in the Smithsonian, because that was after he flew it all around Central and South America and had all the flags on it. But this one is built just like it was when it left for Paris.
Beautiful work.
What are you going to do with it?
Fly it?
Where?
It's already flown 9 times here.
You going to fly it around the country or just over here?
We might take it a couple away things. Not this year because it's still in the test phase and everything, but we may take it a couple places. We'll see. It depends on where.
Bring it to Oshkosh.
Yeah, it's a little trip.
He never took his wife off.
There's always a possibility, so.
He took Henry Ford.
It's
for
been
his
flying
very
quite
first
nicely here.
airplane
Like I
ride.
said, 9 times it's flown.
That's so
And it was a
forward.
very nice, calm,
And,
mild winter, so in December we were able to
airplane
fly
was
it quite a
in the
bit this
Smithsonian
year
before he got
after Ken
married.
completed it. The first flew December 9th, 5th or 9th was the first flight. So, and then we're planning to fly it once the weather breaks
Oh,
here
yeah,
again. And then for the
They
first
went
public flight.
They did a lot of exploration flight
Yeah.
routes for Pan Am and stuff. They went all over the place. And Ann Lindbergh was the first licensed woman pilot in the United States, glider pilot. She took glider lessons from Holly Bolus, who actually worked on the original Spirit of St. Louis.
Was there glass in the original doors?
Yes, and we have it. There's a rack right on the back, right in here, that holds 2 pieces of plexiglass. And they would, like a storm window, they would go up into a slot and come down, so just so far. And then he didn't use any of the windows in the flight, during the flight to Paris. He wanted the air blowing around in there a little bit. And actually, it's not breezy in there at all. But he left the windows out.
Did he have the glass with him on the flight? Did he take the glass with
Yeah.
him on the flight?
Yeah, it was in the end. Because what they did was, especially on the tour, the Goodwill tour of all 48 states, when the airplane was shut down for the evening, when they put it in the hangar, they put the glass in. And then to close the door, you know, if you have the glass in, you can't close the door, because this is the way we close the door with this little latch here. So what they did was they put the glass in, and then they had a little key like this, and they put that in there, and that would work the latch. At least that's what we're assuming. A lot of this stuff is not written down. And through pictures and photographs of things that we could see that there's a little hole there. And this latch part, I traced this from the original airplane. And so we just deduced that they had to lock the door somehow. It wasn't really a lock, it was just a, you know, a means of turning the handle. And then that was it. And if you look at this little latch, this is an actual tracing of the original, and there was a little hole right there. And I couldn't figure out what that hole was for until I made the handle, and then I realized that hole is so that you can put a screwdriver through here.
That makes sense.
And put the little wood screw on there. This one here you can get without going through anything, but that hole necessitated the assembly of the handle.
Yeah, they locked it to keep Jimmy Stewart out.
Yeah, they sort of locked it up to, you know, just to make it a little more secure. The other window would have been in, and this one. And,
How'd he stay up 33 hours?
well, that was probably the only thing he didn't really calculate.
Yeah.
He would practice when he was out in San Diego when they were building the airplane. He would stay up late hours and, you know, just to try to increase his endurance for staying awake.
But you can wait 24 hours before the flight.
Yeah, when he got to Paris, they figured he was up over 50 hours without sleep. So,
How many hours did he have flying, you think, estimate, before he ever flew this? And he was really instrument rated is what he was by doing this, because he couldn't see anything.
yeah, I read in his book that he had 2,500 hours flight time.
And that was way above average at that time.
Yeah, it probably was.
Flying the mail, not a lot of them lived.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And actually, where Lindbergh first thought about going for the Ortiz Prize when he was flying the mail at night, St. Louis to Chicago, and then when he read some articles about the Wright Whirlwind engine, that engine, the Wright had it on a test stand for 150 hours straight running, and he said, "Boy, that's the engine that we need." And so he sort of put this whole plan together with these St. Louis backers, and the rest is history.
Why did he decide no windshield? I mean, you can't see anything there. He didn't really need it, I guess, huh?
Yeah, there was nothing really, no air traffic to speak of. In his books, he said that he wanted to be behind all the fuel in case of a crash. And as you know, quite a few airplanes crashed in the attempt to fly to Paris. But on the other hand, when you think about it, it's the only place the cockpit could be for weight and balance purposes. If you look at this whole area was a gas tank, up from here in on both sides was fuel, and up in where it says St. Louis, right up to that little, right there, was all gas. So if he had to have a cockpit up front, that means all this gas would have to be back here. And you look at the wing, and it would be way tail heavy. So actually, he says that, you know, that's why he designed it that way, but Don Hall actually designed the airplane. And so they figured that was the best place to put the pilot.
Can you point to where the center of gravity is on this plane with all that gas?
It's probably right about here.
With the gas?
Yeah.
Without the gas?
Well, the center of gravity is still here. So if you look at most of this fuel, it's right on the center of gravity. The only fuel that was ahead of the center of gravity was that forward tank. So what he wanted to do too during the flight was use as much of the fuel out of the front tank. He did burn it pretty even, but he wanted to have a rear CG anyway. The airplane flies better with a little rear CG. And if you had to ditch it in the water, it would be less tendency for the airplane to flip over if it was a little tail heavy.
They have any ships that would have saved him if he'd gone down?
No, there was no.
Yeah, no radio.
No radio, nothing, no.
Yeah. How did he learn his navigation so well?
Well, he was in the military, and he learned, the basics from that. All the barnstorming was the seat of the pants flying. And then he also did get together with fellow, I think his name was Weems, who was a Navy navigator who developed quite a few different procedures for celestial navigation and all, you know, all that other stuff. But, he did have a sextant that he was going to take with him, but then he decided not to because he couldn't use a sextant with the, and fly the airplane at the same time. They also had a drift meter that I don't believe he took that with him. I'm not sure. There's not much information on that, but there was a drift meter where it would hang over the side. You could temporarily put it over the side and check the waves, and somehow that would tell him what the wind was doing to him on his flight. But I don't think he took that either. He did have some survival equipment. He had a life raft, and he had some fishing line and a knife and a hacksaw blade, and there's a whole list of things in the book that was in the survival kit. He had some flares with him. There's some flares on the side of the airplane on that side stringer just after the left window. And what they did was they took like road flares and they put them in bicycle tubes and sealed the ends off, waterproof. We have those there. That box right behind the seat is a barograph, and that recorded the flight. It recorded the time and altitude so that they knew he didn't land anywhere. And they needed that, you know, for the Ortiz Prize.
$25,000.
Yeah. An interesting note that they had a couple of panel lights up here on the instrument panel to illuminate it, and they were powered by these old doorbell batteries, which were big round things, and a couple of pounds each. And when he got to New York, he decided that was too much weight to carry, so he took two small flashlights, kept them in his flight suit, and eliminated the doorbell batteries just to save weight.
How much did Ryan charge him for the airplane?
It was, I knew that number at one point. It was 10,000 and change. And I don't remember if that was without the engine. But the Lindbergh Foundation, they give an annual award to for something, and it's the same price as the cost of the airplane.
Yeah, so you're really putting yourself on the line, trying to win that 25,000, spending 10,000, that's an astronomical amount.
Yeah. Well, he had those backers from St. Louis.
I got the money's worth.
Yeah, I don't think that prize money was really Lindbergh's motivation. He wanted aviation to develop. He realized that, you know, during World War I, the United States didn't develop that much in aviation. It was mostly the French and Germans and British. And he wanted to, you know, after the war and in the 20s, he wanted to promote aviation. And that's one of the reasons after his flight to Paris, he went on what they call the goodwill tour of all the 48 states to promote aviation, to try to get it developed more. Because Europe was so far ahead of, you know, the United States.
We have a book, Central Illinois, called It Didn't Play in Peoria. And Peoria was one of the airmail stops that was through it. And he originally had gone to Peoria and asked some of the people there if it was the best. Peoria was a well-off financial city because it had a lot of distilling of alcohol business there. They had a lot of old money, but they thought that was the craziest thing they'd ever done. They said he can't fly across the state of Illinois very well, even let alone across the ocean, because he carried right outside of our town. And that was depicted in the movie. But that's one of the things Peoria turned down that would have been something a little more famous for him, Peoria.
Well, when he took the airplane from San Diego to St. Louis to New York, he set a transcontinental speed record.
That's depicted in the movie.
Yeah.
I think we're gonna have to take